Well, good afternoon, Bill. It's great to see you again. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to your world headquarters to be among the first to learn about what ChargePoint does behind the scenes. We learned a lot. And I thought it might make sense to share a little bit more about ChargePoint's background to our viewers. And as the Senior Vice President of Product, you might just be the perfect person to help me out with all of that. So to get started with these questions, first off, I want to say, is it fair to say that ChargePoint was the first nationwide charging network in the United States?
Yeah, it is. What's amazing when you really think about this crazy company that's been enabling all kinds of businesses and drivers to engage with charging. This started in 2007 before there were cars on the road. And now what's so cool is someone plugs into our network every second, which is incredible. And it's taken a lot of, I think, visionary founders whom really saw the inevitability that people will be driving electric. And since then, the company's really had the mission to create the new fueling network. And today we're over 147,000 places to charge, and with our roaming partners, over 300,000. So it's incredible what's happened.
To go off on a little side note, you've had a long career, a great one, it sounds like. But could you tell me a little bit more about some unexpected ways your experience in previous roles has really guided decisions that you've made at ChargePoint?
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, I have a long career in technology for both consumers and businesses. And kind of at the core of it has been connected devices. How does the hardware experience and that software experience combine to really provide an essential capability to people in their daily lives? That's been kind of the story of my career. And when I met ChargePoint, it clicked all these boxes and was also obviously changing the world in terms of how people move goods and services. And obviously the social and societal and environmental impact is a motivation for all of us at ChargePoint. So I think the combination is understanding, and I grew up in the consumer electronics industry, some of the aspects of how to make it easy for users of all levels of interest, from early adopters to folks that I just want to plug in, go away, and don't bother me. So how to make that accessible and address their various needs. How to marry that with the right kind of enablement for a support experience to support that consumer through their journey. But at the same time, what are the elements that are necessary for different kinds of enterprises? So I have also a background in serving various kinds of businesses with different essential solutions for their employees and other key mission critical operations. And so there's a lot of similarities to that in what we're doing. I was doing enterprise communications, contact center capabilities. There's a lot of similar queuing, scaling, monitoring. We run a contact center and a customer support operation, obviously. And so there's a lot of synergy of thinking of this in the tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and billions of consumers to be served. And this is not just, we are present in North America, but we're also present in Europe. And so that global aspect of this is, I think, another piece of my background that has kind of helped bring a diversity of perspectives. And inside a ChargePoint, there's folks of all different backgrounds, which I think helps bring a very grounded practicality of the right experience that's going to live in the ground for a long time. We have to make it easy for installers and technicians to support this equipment, easy for hosts to create the policies that match their business goal. And what's exciting is the kind of innovation, design, and user experience cooperation through this diverse group of folks that brings us experience that we're so delighted to bring to drivers, to auto OEMs who are big partners of us, auto dealership groups, fleets, and obviously all the various businesses from multifamily properties to office parks to retailers to restaurants to hotels, uh, stadium parking. Every segment is going to need to be electrified to service um, this transition. And so this you know, next 2-3 decades are transformative, and it's a very important time for this industry. So glad you guys are bringing the background to folks, because there's a lot of things that are not understood about driving electric and what this transition really means.
There are a lot of other big public charging networks that
Mhm.
have, they run a specific business model that includes site selection of public parking spaces, and then they install charging hardware at their own expense, and then they resell that electricity to the EV drivers in order to recover the costs, pretty much per, 1 kilowatt hour at a time. Now, what I understand is that ChargePoint actually has an entirely different business model. So, can you explain that for us?
Certainly. And so this is really important for people to understand, in the sense that our business is providing solutions to homeowners, but traditionally our business has been enabling businesses to offer charging to their constituents for their business purpose. So, for example, in a workplace whom wants to ensure that their employees have a place to charge, participate in sustainability efforts, enable that benefit for their employees, workplaces procure from ChargePoint charging stations and all the cloud management and other support services to enable a great charging experience for them and their employees. Same for retailers, same for multifamily properties. So we're really selling to businesses. Uh, and if you kind of look at the business overall, we're enabling any place where you sleep, single family home, multifamily properties, where you live, work, and play is really how we sum it up. And incredibly important in the move to electrification is fleets. So that's a whole nother segment for us, where we're providing a set of capabilities for these businesses so they can join the new fueling network. And oftentimes that's a combination of the chargers that we're accustomed to seeing, but the cloud services that manage that experience. So everyone, from the host, as we describe, to the driver, have a great experience.
Yeah, and I learned that you guys cover a lot of different categories that others don't. But I also learned that a new charging session is started every second of the day on the ChargePoint network. And so, what would you say? What categories is ChargePoint leading in right now?
Well, all of them. So we participate in creating the charging experiences that people need based on um, their what we would call dwell time. So if you are going to an environment where you might stay for a few hours, could be a retailer, a mall, a gym, a workplace, we're providing a whole range of charging solutions from the station to those cloud services with specific capabilities that are important for those environments. And then if you're making a weekend trip to the mountains or the beaches, we're also providing to various site hosts. Could be we recently announced a partnership with Volvo and Starbucks, where 15 different sites of the Starbucks environment will be equipped with high-speed charging. And so it's really what we think about is the use case of what's appropriate for that driver's experience for how long they're staying in that given environment. And as your viewers are probably familiar, there is a different fueling model to driving electric versus what we've been raised with driving an ICE or an internal combustion engine. We don't drive around looking for the yellow light and trying to find a place to charge when you have an EV. You're typically topping off that vehicle, doing a lot of onboarding of fuel at home, a lot of onboarding of fuel where the car is parked and is parked, 96% of the day. And so that's typically at work, oftentimes at home, around town. Those are all great places to charge, and we're enabling it all.
You also, we're talking a little bit about level two, and we're talking about DC fast charging. But one another thing that I learned was that you guys are uniquely vertically integrated. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. So we are really focused on innovation, design, and a great user experience for both the driver and the host. And so we've taken an approach of which it's all standards based, But in our charging station design and integration, we write the firmware on that station and we build and design those stations. And then the cloud layer that's kind of invisible to consumers, but very um, fundamental to the experience one has, is also created and developed and managed by ChargePoint. And then the mobile app, which you can get in the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store, is a free app to drivers, and we create that as well as experiences that go in dash. Maybe you have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto in your vehicle that will show up on your dashboard. Or maybe you have a vehicle that has an embedded ChargePoint experience. The Mercedes EQS, Mercedes Me experience is powered by ChargePoint. We've done a lot of deep integrations with folks like Volvo and Polestar. And so the experience is what we're really trying to optimize for. And because we're writing the software and really people kind of see the stations, but the experience is really orchestrated, particularly at scale, with someone plugging in every second through software. So because of this deep integration, we know the status of the station. We know if it's busy or available, and we publish that in real time to the ChargePoint mobile app, in dash to those partners that I described, to the Google Maps and Apple Maps, if drivers might be using those. And because of this deep integration, we also have, beyond what general standards provide for, the ability to diagnose, troubleshoot, restart stations, have pretty precise knowledge if there is an issue with a station of what a technician might need to bring with them on site. And so all of this is about orchestrating a great experience to make it easy for everyone. And that is the driver. That's the host who really doesn't want to be in the charging business. They want to offer charging as part of their business. So typically with a retailer, they would like to enable charging so that the consumers that they're trying to attract and retain spend more share of wallet or share of time with their particular entities. And so that combination and that integration of what we've done creates a more reliable, supportable, scalable experience, and also makes it easier. And I mentioned the ChargePoint mobile app. A cool capability is if you have a smartphone, and most of many EV drivers do, you can load the ChargePoint app into your wallet and just tap it to the front of the station, which authenticates you and then allows the driver to release the connector, plug it in their vehicle, walk away, and have a great time doing whatever they're doing to recharge themselves.
You had touched on this a little bit, but other competitors offer a service that's frictionless for charging, and you do offer that service with the Mercedes EQS. But some other drivers have to initialize the session, like you said, by using the tapping with the app. Do you see there being more accessibility for the plug and charge type of system coming from other, more makes and models eventually?
Yeah, so we've worked very closely with the industry. So I mentioned innovation, and we have a really an industry leading multidisciplinary development team, larger than anybody else in the industry, and they've been very instrumental in changing the standards and raising the bar of security in concert with the Society of Automotive Engineers, in partnership with automobile brands and other network operators. So we see the security underlying the interaction of the driver to the station to be reaching a new level. And that includes extending plug and charge capabilities to more experiences. It is kind of limited in terms of what's available today in AC and DC, but that will expand as more and more stations deploy. But we actually think of innovation and usability at a little higher level. We think, that plug and charge is convenient in a lot of cases, but ultimately, I'd like to know before I even get to the station who the driver is and create a better experience for them. And so there's other ways to orchestrate that authentication. And today, ChargePoint has many. We're innovating in a lot of ways. But we think ultimately this is about creating seamless, easy experiences for folks and helping manage utilization. And here's a different example. Oftentimes, people are charging at work, and there's a set of stations available to those employees, but maybe you got there late and everyone else is occupying a station at the moment. What ChargePoint has created of this orchestration is the ability to, as I arrive, I can join the wait list. And as someone backs away and a station is becomes available, it's being held for me, and I'm notified through the mobile app that now I'm up. I can snooze if I'm busy in a meeting, or I can go occupy that slot. And so that's an example of I'd like to actually authenticate the driver before they've arrived because I can better manage utilization for the host. And our customer is the host. They're deploying charging for a whole variety of reasons. And so keeping that whole experience seamless and easy is a big part of what we do, and making seamless ways to authenticate and know who those drivers are and manage those drivers for certain uh, permissions is kind of another tenet of ChargePoints. So one of the kind of interesting aspects of this is I mentioned that the cloud is orchestrating this experience. And what you saw when you visited our headquarters is we're in a large office park that serves the public, serves other businesses, serves ChargePoint. And the reason I bring up authentication is we want to identify if those drivers are part of certain groups that have special privileges. And through the cloud software, we can control access to a certain set of users at certain times of day. We may have special rates for certain types of users, like employees might be free, and that's the policy at ChargePoint. There may be, it's only available to fleet vehicles after hours. And so that is why knowing the driver and having this interaction of authentication before they plug in helps create a better experience for everyone. So plug and charge is an exciting technology. It's great in kind of corridor scenarios, but oftentimes it's maybe not it's not the solution that's appropriate for every use case.
Sure. And yeah, that waitlist feature is very unique. I don't think anybody else in the industry does that, do they?
No, it's difficult to do unless you have control of the hardware, the firmware, the software. Uh, we've been unique in the sense that we started with stations with displays because we want to signal to the driver that might be pulling in, this one's on hold for XYZ. And so thinking of it as a complete experience is, I think, testament to the founders of ChargePoint and the early kind of employees that created this experience that we're all enjoying today.
Absolutely. Just talking about the multifamily stuff, I want to dig in a little bit there
Okay.
because I personally wouldn't own an EV if I couldn't charge overnight at my house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's a ChargePoint home charging station that's very popular, the Flex. But what specifically is ChargePoint doing to make overnight charging easy for those who rent in a multifamily building?
All right, we're doing a lot, and we've been doing it for a long time. And so we have a variety of ways that what are essentially commercial real estate entities who operate these multifamily properties can deploy, from shared charging options that very much look like what you might see at a workplace to dedicated charging that can be assigned to a parking space and only for that driver. And there's ways in which the driver can pay a monthly fee for access to that station, whereas the host deploys the station itself, and then we manage kind of the metering of the energy so that the tenant is reimbursing the host for the energy. But there's other models as well. So there's a whole host of capabilities. It's a very important area to have electrified, to make this transition. More and more people are going to be living in multi-dwelling units in the next decades. It's just, you go around any city in the country and you see cranes everywhere, and you see a lot of new construction. And so we're working very closely with electrical contractors, architects, and increasingly there's building codes also requiring a certain percentage of spaces to be electrified. So we're attacking it on all fronts. We're trying to make it very easy for landlords to participate in this. There are various ownership models for multifamily properties, from condos to rental apartments to others. And so we have options for all of them. And our website has a lot of descriptions of what we have available.
Yeah, it is a critical space, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys help pull that along the way because
Mm-hmm.
it's a common complaint from a lot of people that want to go EV that they don't have charging at their multifamily places yet. But going back to like level 2 and DC fast charging as an overall concept, I
Mhm.
recently won a televised cross country EV rally called the Charge Across America, which was, it relied entirely on the public CCS fast charging network. And
Mhm.
most of the teams in the competition frequently encountered disabled or underperforming stations. And in my work launching EVs for automakers, I've also encountered non operational, whether that's level 2 or DC fast charging stations, by a lot of the major network providers. So, can you explain what ChargePoint is doing to rise above the competitors in terms of uptime and higher performance?
Sure. So, very important topic. Uh, s- so, first of all, because we are designing both the station, the software, and the cloud, we have the ability to, and we are deeply monitoring the health of those stations to a degree in our newest generation products that wasn't capable several generations ago. Um, you saw the design approach that we take to hardware. And so in our latest generation of products in the market, the CP250, some of your drivers may be familiar with, um, and in future generations, like our modular Express Plus architecture, there's a lot of modularity designed into the stations that'll allow a, a technician versus a very specialized electrician to remove a module and replace it, and they are coded in actually spared, meaning spare parts, distributed around the country in such a way that if they are down for a particular reason, they can be brought up very quickly. But um, that's part one. Part two is we're offering a range of services to site hosts in DC who want to host DC environments, very much in the beginning design stage, to ensure from the balance of system, electrical power coming into the environment to the wiring to the station, we are very deeply certifying that in these deployments, and we are offering services to hosts of a variety kind of service levels, depending on what's appropriate for them. That gives them, um, if they don't want to manage it, we can dispatch trucks and ensure those stations are available and up. Now, again, the stations are owned by the host, not by ChargePoint. And I think this is one of the things that's not obvious to drivers, and very clearly they shouldn't really care. But um, the hosts oftentimes now are seeing the criticality of the charging service to their core business. I mentioned Volvo and Starbucks. They're deploying um, a large number of DC stations because they understand the auto OEM, the retailer in this case, how critical it is to enable this constituency. So I think what you're going to see is more sensitivity to the quality experience that of the charging provided, because it's becoming essential. And we have a whole variety of services that make it easy for the host. And I think what you'll see, and hopefully you saw in our advanced testing lab, the rigor that we put these stations through, from the temperature and the elements exposure to man-made um, issues that could arise from someone trying to vandalize a station. There's a lot of effort we put to design these stations to be there when you need them, and so we're really proud of what we've achieved. We are very maniacal about the network experience, and so for many people, the product is the network, and so um, we increasingly are working with our hosts to make sure their data about their stations, and are they behind a fence? Are the hours of operation accurate on our mobile app? That's all really important information for drivers. And so we are working really hard to make sure that's as accurate as it can be.
Absolutely. Now, in my experience with EV road trips in particular, I
Hmm.
think hotel charging overnight is the most convenient, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. But how is ChargePoint addressing that particular space?
So we have sales teams that work with the national hotel chains, and it's up to those folks to deploy charging because it's they're the host, it's their real estate, it's their electricity, and they can do that. And some of the motivations of the hotel chains is they do want to attract EV drivers. Uh, they may build EV access into the loyalty programs, and that's kind of the orchestration we can do from knowing who the driver is and giving them special permissions if they link their loyalty program to that particular hotel chain. So lots of capabilities for hotels to participate. One of the areas that we're innovating is, um, you know, going into offer charging can be expensive for some businesses. Uh, there's the preparation of the site, but then there's the purchase of the equipment. There's lots of grants and other incentives that are available. There are also various buying options that we've made available to businesses so they can actually buy the whole solution on an as a service basis from ChargePoint. We call that ChargePoint as a service. So we're trying to make it really easy for businesses to participate. And where the car sleeps throughout the evening is a really important segment. So whether that's multifamily, single family hotels, it all needs to be electrified.
I couldn't agree more. One last question here. I want to go and talk a little bit more about, as we talked about stations, maybe maintenance on the side of things that might need repairing, because when we filmed our Polestar 2 review on the PCH between Santa Monica and Malibu, the system had shown a lot of level 2 charging stations available along the route. But when we tried to test the charging, we encountered map stations, even some from ChargePoint, which had restricted access or they weren't functional, unfortunately. So when a customer changes the policy of a charger to make it private or otherwise they decommission it, I guess what process is enacted on your side to remove it from the maps system?
It's automatic. And so
Okay.
we are showing a pin on so you should use the ChargePoint app. That's going to be the most accurate status of stations. I don't know what app you might be using, but that also is reflected in the dashboard of a Volvo and a Polestar in terms of their Android Auto Google environment of that vehicle, as well as Apple Maps and Google Maps. And so if the stations are available, they're green. If they're occupied, they're blue. If we do not know the status, and what we do show in the ChargePoint app are other networks. And sometimes we will not know the other network status, and they'll show up as gray. If there is stations that might show up green but are actually behind a fence, we have driver tips and notes that will help inform the driver of that case, as well as what the fees are that are being offered by that particular host. And so ChargePoint does not set the prices. ChargePoint gathers this information from the host and then displays it to the driver in the mobile app.
Got it. Well, clearly you have a great deal of responsibility, and I'm super grateful that you've spent some time with us today to really give us a lot more information, and we really look forward to seeing the progress from ChargePoint and getting more EVs on the road, that's for sure.
Thanks so much.